What happens when a CEO trades his corner office for a beat-up delivery van and finds out his team's being pushed to the edge 7 years ago? Silas Armstrong bought a small courier company with 13 warehouses spread across the state. Back then, it was struggling bad management, low morale, and terrible service. Silas turned things around by investing in better systems, hiring smarter, and training hard. It worked. The company became known for speed and reliability, but lately something felt off. Customer complaints were creeping up. A few packages were marked delivered but never arrived. And then there were the whispers, drivers quitting without notice, injuries going unreported, and a few trucks coming back with damage no one could explain. District reports said everything was fine. Too fine. Silas didn't trust that. He'd never met most of the on-site warehouse staff. The company had grown fast, and with 13 locations, it wasn't personal anymore. So he made a decision. He'd go undercover just for a few days to see what was really going on, one location at a time. He started with Warehouse 9. It was clean on paper, great delivery times, low turnover, solid reviews. But Silas had learned that the cleanest reports sometimes hid the dirtiest truths. He grew out his beard, dyed it dark, and wore a beanie low on his forehead. A pair of thick glasses helped cover his face. His name badge read Stan. As a new temp hire, he'd be shadowing a driver for the week. No one at Warehouse 9 had ever met Silas in person. The manager had only seen his face once during a Zoom call 2 years ago, and that was when Silas had a buzz cut and no beard. He walked into the warehouse lobby at 7 a.m. sharp. A woman at the front desk looked up. "You the new guy from the temp agency?" "Yeah." "Stan," she handed him a clipboard. "Sign this. You're with Devon today, Route 8. Silas nodded. "Thanks." Devon was already by the loading bay, leaning against the side of a white van, sipping gas station coffee. Tall, mid-30s, lean like someone who didn't have time to eat 3 meals a day. His uniform shirt was stained near the collar, and his eyes were heavy like he hadn't slept. "You Stan?" Devon asked, not unkindly. "Yeah, ready when you are." Devon tossed the coffee cup in a bin. "You ever ride a route before?" "Nope, you'll learn fast. Just don't slow me down." They loaded up in silence. Devon moved fast, too fast. The packages were jammed into corners, labels barely visible. By the time the van was full, Silas was already sweating. They hit the road. The first few stops were rough. Devon didn't waste seconds. "Leave it by the door, don't ring unless it's a signature, run if it's a dog house." His words were fast, sharp, automatic. By the 4th stop, Silas was panting. "You all right, man?" Devon asked, half turning. "Yeah." "Just trying to keep up." Devon gave a short laugh. "Get used to it. We're supposed to finish this route in 4 hours. Used to be 6. "Manager says speed over comfort." His words. Silas frowned. "How long you been doing this?" 4 years. Warehouse 9's the busiest. "We cover more ground than any other branch." "Is that why there's so many new temp hires?" Devon didn't answer right away. He pulled into a cul-de-sac, hopped out, and jogged a package to a porch. When he climbed back in, he finally said, "People don't last. Some quit, some get cut for being too slow. One guy broke his ankle last month, still finished the route before he went to urgent care." Silas kept quiet. His gut was already turning. By noon, they were halfway through the route. Silas's legs burned. Devon barely drank water. At one point, Silas dropped a package, trying to keep up. It slid across the driveway. Devon flinched. "Careful, man, that could be electronics. Sorry." "Don't say sorry to me. Say it to the manager if it breaks. He'll chew you out like a dog." Silas raised an eyebrow. "He's that bad?" Devon stared at the windshield. "You'll see." They pulled into a gas station for 5 minutes. Devon let out a long breath and leaned back in his seat. "He times our bathroom breaks, you know. If we're idle too long, he calls. Says we're stealing time." "Seriously?" "Dead serious. His name's Kyle, been running this warehouse for 3 years. Thinks he's the drill sergeant of logistics." Just then, Devon's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and cursed. "Speak of the devil," he answered. "Yeah, we're on schedule." "No, I didn't stop long, just 5 minutes." "I know what the tracker says, Kyle. I'm not slacking, I'm training the new guy." "What? He's doing fine, but I'm not going to push him to puke on his first day." There was a pause. Then Devon's face went red. "You don't talk about me like that, man. I bust my ass every damn day." "No, you listen. but the call ended. Devin slammed the phone down. "Son of a," Silas kept his voice low. "You all right?" Devin didn't answer. He just started the van again. The rest of the route was dead silent. At 5 p.m., they pulled back into the warehouse lot. The sun was dipping low. Devin parked the van, shut off the engine, and sat still for a second. "Tomorrow will be worse," he muttered. Inside the warehouse, Kyle was waiting. He was mid-30s, clean-shaven, short-cropped hair, polo tucked in too tight. His eyes narrowed when he saw Devin. "You call that fast?" Kyle barked. "You were 42 minutes over. We had a trainee." "Then you should have made up for it." Devin stood still, jaw tight. Kyle turned to Silas. "You the new guy, temp?" "Yeah, Stan." Kyle stepped closer. "You slow him down, Stan." "I did my best." "That won't cut it here. You either move like you want to keep the job or you're gone. Got it?" Silas locked eyes with him. "Got it." Kyle walked off muttering, "Slackers." Devin didn't move. His hands were clenched. Silas spoke low. "Does he always talk to people like that?" "Only when he's in a good mood." By the time Silas left the warehouse that night, he felt sick, not just from the physical work but from what he saw. This wasn't leadership. This was fear-based control. Good people were being broken down for speed. And the rest just left. He drove home in silence. Warehouse 9 was the cleanest on paper, but tomorrow he was coming back to dig deeper, and Kyle had no idea who he was actually yelling at. The next morning, Silas arrived before sunrise. The warehouse parking lot was still mostly empty, the air damp with early fog. A few vans sat in their bays, engines off, headlights dark. He stayed in his car for a few minutes, watching. A lone figure emerged from the side entrance, pushing a rolling bin stacked high with small parcels. She moved with purpose, quick, steady steps, no wasted motion. She wore her hoodie under her company jacket, hood up, headphones in. Silas noted how she balanced the bin's weight with her hip as she turned the corner toward one of the outbound vans. He stepped out of his car and walked inside. The warehouse lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow over the concrete floor. Unlike yesterday, there was a low hum of activity. A few workers were already scanning packages into bins, their eyes heavy, movements mechanical. No one spoke. Kyle wasn't around yet. At the far end of the loading floor, Devin was leaning against the side of another van, arms crossed, backpack at his feet. His expression was unreadable. "You're early," he said. "So are you," Devin shrugged. "Didn't sleep much." Silas nodded, then pointed toward the woman he'd seen earlier. "Who's that?" Devin followed his gaze. "That's Melina. She's been here longer than I have, knows more than anyone in this place, but Kyle treats her like she's wallpaper. She always start that early." "Yeah. She runs the pre-sort alone most days. Used to have help, but the second guy quit last month and Kyle didn't replace him, said the budget didn't allow it." Silas watched her for a moment longer. The pace she kept was tireless, focused, like she was racing an invisible clock. "Why'd she stay?" Devin scratched his jaw. "Single mom. 2 boys. She's got no choice." One of the other drivers, a broad-shouldered man with a limp in his left leg, walked past muttering something under his breath about the scanners being dead again. Devin turned away. "Don't worry about him," he said. "That's Wes. He's been fighting with Kyle for weeks about the route loads. He's got a busted knee, but Kyle still assigns him the longest loop." Before Silas could respond, the front office door swung open. Kyle stormed across the loading floor with a clipboard in one hand and a walkie in the other. His voice echoed off the walls. "Let's go. Vans should be rolling out in 20 minutes. If you're not loaded, you're late." He made a sharp turn toward the far bay. Melina didn't look up. Kyle stopped short. "Where's the second loader?" Melina kept working. Kyle raised his voice. "Hey. I asked you a question." Silas moved subtly closer, pretending to adjust one of the bins near his assigned van. Melina pulled one earbud out. "There is no second loader. You cut that position last month." Kyle's nostrils flared. "You're behind." "I'm 5 minutes behind." "I got here an hour early. You're still behind. That's not acceptable." She turned fully to face him. "You want it faster, bring back the second loader." Kyle stepped in, voice low but sharp. "You want to talk about acceptable? You're on thin ice, Melina." "You want me to find someone hungrier?" She didn't answer. Just turned back to the bin and started scanning again. Kyle walked off. Silas felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't just the workload, it was the way Kyle wielded fear like a tool. There was no motivation, no leadership. Just pressure. Devin loaded their van in silence. They pulled out 6 minutes late. Silas watched the warehouse disappear in the mirror as the van turned onto the main road. Is it always like this? He asked. Devin didn't look over. No. Some days, it's worse. They drove in silence for a while, the van rattling over potholes as the city woke up around them. The route today cut through a commercial district with tight windows for morning deliveries. At one stop, Silas followed Devin up a narrow staircase to a dental office on the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and old carpet. Devin rang the bell and waited. A receptionist opened the door, already mid-call. She motioned for the package. Devin held it out. She took it without a word, turned and let the door shut behind her. Back in the van, Devin exhaled hard. You know what's funny? We get rated by customer feedback now, like a driver's scorecard, but we're not allowed to take longer than 15 seconds at each stop. So if someone has a question or wants to talk, we risk getting docked. Silas frowned. That's real? Yeah, Kyle calls it performance optimization. I call it setting people up to fail. They knocked out 7 more stops in the next hour. At 1, the buzzer was broken and Devin had to call the number listed. No one answered. He left a note, marked the package as undeliverable. Minutes later, his phone rang. Kyle, Devin answered, jaw tight. It was locked. No buzzers, no I called, no answer. No, I didn't wait 10 minutes, I waited 5 because we're behind. You want me to make up time or not? Silas could hear Kyle's voice crackling faintly through the speaker, fast and angry. Devin ended the call, then tossed the phone onto the dashboard. Every time there's a delay, it's our fault, he said. Never the address, never the building, never the system, always us. Silas nodded slowly. What would you change if you had the chance? Devin didn't answer right away. He turned down a side street, avoiding traffic, then said quietly, I'd start by listening, just once, just really listening. They finished the route by early afternoon, barely scraping the deadline. Back at the warehouse, the parking area was full of vans returning at staggered intervals. Drivers climbed out, shoulders slumped, some limping, others rubbing their wrists or lower backs. No one spoke. Inside, Kyle was standing near the scanner station, watching the return logs. Wes walked in, limping worse than before. He dropped his scanner on the desk. Route 21 took me 6.5 hours, he said. That loop's not doable in under 5 unless I'm running red lights. Kyle didn't look up. You're not managing your time. Wes stepped closer. I've been here 6 years, I know that loop. It's too long and you know it. Kyle looked up now. Then maybe it's time someone else ran it. Wes stared at him. Maybe it's time someone else ran this place. Kyle's expression didn't change. Clock out, Wes. Wes didn't move. Silas stepped forward. He's got a point. Kyle turned. You've been here 2 days. You don't know anything. I know what I've seen. Kyle's jaw tightened. Stay out of it. Silas didn't respond. He just looked at Wes, nodded once, then walked out. That night, Silas sat at his kitchen table, staring at the notes he'd taken. He had names, quotes, times, but none of it captured the exhaustion he'd seen in their faces. The kind that didn't come from just physical labor, but from not being heard, not being valued. He opened his laptop and pulled up internal records. Warehouse 9 had higher turnover than any other branch, despite being listed as one of the most efficient. Injury reports were underdocumented. Customer refunds were rising. But the quarterly reports, all green checkmarks. Kyle had been gaming the system. Silas leaned back, eyes scanning the screen. He wasn't done. Not yet. Tomorrow, he'd work with Melina, and he'd do it on her shift before the sun even rose. Silas arrived at Warehouse 9 at 4:45 the next morning. The sky was still dark, the air damp with the kind of chill that settled in before sunrise. The warehouse bays were quiet, lights still off in the main loading area. He waited near the side entrance, watching for movement. At 4:58, the door creaked open, and Melina stepped through, keycard in hand. She wore a faded gray jacket over her uniform and carried a thermos tucked under her arm. She reached for the light panel near the wall and flipped on the overheads, blinking slightly against the flicker. Silas moved quietly behind her. You're early, she said without looking, her voice flat but not unfriendly. Figured I'd see it from the start. She turned, then narrowed her eyes. You're the temp riding with Devin, right, Stan? Yeah. Her gaze held for a second longer than necessary, like she was measuring something. Then she nodded once and walked toward the loading grid. Grab a scanner from the cart. You can help with the overflow bin. They worked in near silence for the first 5 minutes. Melina moved quickly, scanning barcodes, sorting small parcels into route-specific bins. She never hesitated. Her hands had the kind of rhythm that only came from repetition, the kind no one teaches. The first van backed into the southeastern bay at 5:13. The driver didn't speak. He opened the rear doors and waited while Melina handed him his first load. "You do this every morning?" Silas asked. 6 days a week. No backup, she didn't answer. Just handed him a box and turned back to the scanner. Silas watched her sort by memory. She knew the route numbers before checking the manifest. Every third or fourth package, she made a quick note on a clipboard hanging by the loading dock. He walked over and glanced at it. She noticed. "You don't need to look at that. Just trying to help. You want to help. Don't ask questions that slow me down." Silas stepped back. "Fair." Another driver entered the bay, stretching his neck from side to side. He looked young, maybe early 20s, with pink-red marks under his eyes like he hadn't slept. He didn't make eye contact. Melina handed him his batch. "Route 23, Building C was flagged yesterday, no elevator, don't overload it." He gave a nod but didn't respond. Silas followed him out, watching as he loaded the van. He moved with hesitation, checking labels twice, adjusting placement more than necessary. Back inside, Melina was already halfway through the next set. "How long's he been here?" Silas asked. "Illy." 2 weeks. He looks wrecked. "He's doing the job of 3 people, that'll do it." Silas grabbed another bin and worked beside her, trying to match her pace. His scanner beeped slower. He had to double-check the route tags, unfamiliar with the codes. She didn't slow down. At 5:32, a loud clang echoed through the bay. One of the carts had tipped over near the west wall. Packages scattered across the floor. Melina didn't flinch. "Leave it," she said. "That's Kyle's inbound. He can clean it." By 6, the vans were pulling out one after another. The lot filled with the sounds of engines turning over, tires crunching gravel, radios flicking on. The warehouse thinned out. Melina set her scanner down and rubbed her lower back once, briefly. "You always keep pace like that?" Silas asked. "If I don't, the last van leaves late." And if the last van leaves late, Kyle starts calling people at home to yell about it. She poured coffee from her thermos into a paper cup she pulled from her jacket pocket. Her hands shook slightly. "You ever ask for help?" he asked. "Asked once. Got told to manage expectations. That was last year." Silas nodded but didn't speak. At 6:15, Kyle arrived. He walked in with a folder under one arm and a Bluetooth headset already in his ear. He headed straight for the scanner logs, barely glancing at the floor. The cart of spilled packages still lay in a heap near the wall. He stopped in front of the screen. "Why's Route 31 still showing incomplete?" Melina didn't answer. She was loading the last few envelopes into a labeled bin. Kyle turned. "I asked you a question." "New driver." "Took longer to load." "Then maybe he's not the right fit." Silas stepped forward. "He's been here 2 weeks. Give him time." Kyle's eyes flicked to him. "Did I ask for your input?" Melina looked up now. "He's helping." "That's what you wanted, right?" she said. Kyle ignored her. "You're not even on the clock yet," he said to Silas. "So if you're here, it's on your own time. Don't waste mine." Silas held his gaze for a beat. Then he turned and walked to the far end of the warehouse, pretending to check the manifest board. Kyle followed Melina to the packing station. "You left a bin unsecured yesterday," he said. "Scanner logged a delay at outbound." "No, I didn't. System says you did." "Then the system's wrong." Kyle stepped closer. "You want to argue with me?" "No, I want to work without being accused of things I didn't do." He didn't respond. Just made a mark on the clipboard and turned to leave. Silas had seen enough. He waited until Kyle was out of earshot, then walked back to Melina. "There's a meeting room here, right?" "Yeah, why?" "Because I'm done watching this." He walked straight to the front office. The receptionist looked up, surprised. "I need the key to the floor conference room," he said. "It's not open until 9. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his real badge and held it up. "I think this makes an exception." Her eyes widened. She stood slowly and retrieved the key. He walked down the hall, slid the key into the lock and stepped inside. The The walls were lined with filing cabinets, a whiteboard covered in route maps, and a single long table under fluorescent lights. He sat at the head. He texted his executive assistant to pull up the last year's internal reports from Warehouse 9, including exit interviews, injury logs, and route efficiency audits. Then he called the regional HR director. Get here by 8. Bring someone from compliance. At exactly 7:15, after the last van had departed, he stepped back onto the warehouse floor. Kyle was yelling again, this time at one of the part-time loaders who just punched in. Something about mislabeled bins. Silas walked straight past him and tapped Melina on the shoulder. Come with me, she blinked. Why? You'll see. Inside the conference room, she sat across from him, unsure. He took off the glasses, pulled off the hat, her face froze. You're Silas Armstrong, she sat back slowly. I've been working this site for 3 days, he said. I've watched you carry this place without help. I've seen how you're treated. And I've seen employees pushed past their limits while Kyle manipulates the numbers. She didn't speak. Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to him. I need you to tell me exactly what's been happening here. Everything, no filters, she hesitated. If I do that, you won't lose your job, I promise you that. She exhaled, then nodded once. It started about a year after Kyle took over. He cut positions, blamed budgets. When we fell behind, he made up new metrics. Drivers started getting penalized for things out of their control. He'd dock hours for attitude. He stopped replacing broken equipment. The second we questioned anything, we were told we could leave. Silas listened carefully, taking notes. He changed the way the scanners logged breaks. Now if you stop more than once, it flags your route. Most people just skip lunch, and injuries, covered up, or blamed on the driver. Wes filed a report for his knee last month. Kyle said it was pre-existing. HR signed off without even asking questions. The door opened. The HR director stepped in. Silas stood. Bring Kyle in, he said. Now. 5 minutes later, Kyle entered the room, confused. What's going on? Silas turned to face him. I've seen enough, I've heard enough, and I've read enough. You've been doctoring operational reports and suppressing employee concerns to hit false performance targets. Kyle's face drained of color. Wait, I don't know what she told you, but she didn't need to tell me anything I didn't already witness myself. Kyle opened his mouth again, but Silas cut him off. You're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. HR will walk you through the exit process. Kyle turned toward Melina, then back to Silas. This is a mistake. It's a correction. Kyle was escorted out without another word. Silas turned back to Melina. You're not alone in this anymore. I'm going to fix it. But I need help from people who know what it's really like here. She looked at him, still stunned. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll help. Outside the conference room, the warehouse kept moving. Parcels still needed sorting. Routes still needed running, but something had shifted. And it wasn't just the leadership. It had been 5 days since Kyle was removed from Warehouse 9. The warehouse still ran early, still ran hard, but the air inside now felt different, like something had finally let go of the tension pulling everyone's shoulders up to their ears. No one cheered, no one celebrated, but people held eye contact longer. Drivers stopped pretending not to recognize each other in the lot. Even the silence during loadouts felt less suffocating. Silas didn't disappear after the reveal. That was part of the problem in the first place, distance. He came back each morning, still dressed down but no longer pretending. He didn't give speeches or walk through the warehouse with a clipboard. He worked the floor, asked questions, and more importantly listened without interrupting. The first real change came subtly. At the next all-hands meeting, held at 6:15 in the break room during the slowest window of the morning, Silas stood in front of the stained whiteboard, holding nothing but a folded sheet of printer paper. The room was packed. Some leaned against the walls, some sat on overturned bins. Wes stood near the back, his knee wrapped tightly in a brace. Melina had both her boys waiting in a neighbor's car outside, headphones in, watching cartoons while she took the meeting. I'm not going to talk about what happened last week, Silas said. You were all here for it. You know what it was. He paused, letting the quiet stretch. What I want to talk about is what happens next, because what happened before wasn't just one person's fault. It was mine too. No one moved, no response, but no resistance either. I built this company from a place of belief. I believed in systems, in efficiency, in metrics. And somewhere in all that, I stopped asking real people what those metrics were costing them. I stopped checking if the numbers we were proud of came from things we should be proud of. He unfolded the paper. This is a list of positions we're reinstating immediately. 2 part-time preloaders on morning shift, a dedicated equipment maintenance tech, and a floating assistant for heavy routes. These are not temporary. We've already started interviews and pulled the budget from corporate reserves. A ripple of glances passed through the room. We're also launching a rotating feedback group, 5 employees from this warehouse every month, chosen at random. You'll meet with me directly. No filters, no middlemen. You'll tell me what's working and what's not. Someone near the back, an older driver with gray at his temples, raised a hand. And what if we say something you don't want to hear? Silas didn't hesitate. Then you'll have done your job. And I'll have to do mine better. He nodded once and stepped aside. You don't owe me applause, you owe each other honesty. That's the only way this holds. He left the room without waiting for anything more. That afternoon, Melina found him by the side entrance, clipboard in hand, checking the first vendor delivery of new scanner holsters. The old ones had been tearing at the straps, causing dropped units and false readings. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You're really going through with all of it. I said I would. She shifted her weight. Most people say things like that in the moment, then things go quiet again. He looked up. I don't need things to go back to quiet, I need them to go forward. She studied him a moment longer. I've got a name for your first feedback rotation. Start with Ali. He's not going to raise his hand, but he needs to be heard. Silas nodded. He's already on the list. The next few days brought adjustments, but not miracles. The new hires trickled in slowly. Some had experience, others had questions. Melina trained the loaders herself, using taped-off squares on the floor to show them how imbalance in a bin could cost them both time and safety. She didn't explain why she was the one doing it. She just did it. Wes stayed on reduced hours while his knee healed, and the floating assistant Jordan, a former route driver, took over the longer loops. No one complained. They'd all seen Wes limp through deliveries for weeks. Giving him breathing room felt like something they should have been doing all along. Devin didn't ask for anything, but Silas noticed he'd stopped skipping lunch. Not because the pace got easier, because the schedule finally allowed the time. A 15-minute window wasn't generous, but it was real. On Thursday, the regional safety lead stopped by for an unannounced equipment audit. Normally, that would have sent the floor into a quiet panic. But this time, the scanners were already logged, the ladders tagged, and the breaks documented correctly. The safety rep left without filing a single violation. That night, Silas stayed late. The warehouse was nearly empty, the final vans just pulling into the bays. He sat in the break room, watching the reports upload from the day's shifts. Melina walked in, a paper plate of leftover donuts in one hand. You're still here. Trying not to fall behind, she sat across from him, slid the plate to the center of the table. These are from Jessie. She's one of the new preloaders, bakes at night. Thought people would appreciate something that didn't come out of a vending machine. Silas picked up a powdered one, took a bite. It was soft, warm enough to still feel fresh. She's right. They sat in silence for a moment. You think it'll last? She asked. What? This, the changes. The pace, the listening. Silas didn't answer right away. It will if I do. She leaned back, arms folded. People are still waiting to see if you disappear again. I know. And if you do, this place'll go right back to what it was. Or worse. I know that too. He finished the donut and wiped his hands on a napkin. I'm not trying to be a face on a poster. I'm trying to be someone who knows what it feels like to stand in this room and not want to come back the next morning. Melina narrowed her eyes slightly, then nodded once. All right, she said. Then keep showing up. She stood, picked up the plate, and left. The following week, the first feedback session was held in the conference room. Eli sat 2 seats from the end, hands in his lap, eyes fixed on the table. When Silas asked what one thing would make his route survivable, Eli didn't talk about pay or hours. He said, I don't mind hard work. I just want to stop feeling like I'm invisible. Silas wrote it down. The next day, Eli's route was adjusted to avoid the building with 7 stories and no working elevator. That wasn't a reward. That was just overdue. 3 weeks later, Warehouse 9 posted its first month of improved delivery satisfaction without a single flagged injury or en route incident. The numbers weren't perfect. They didn't need to be. What mattered wasn't the metrics. It was that every driver, loader, and sorter knew exactly who to go to when something wasn't right and knew they'd be heard. Silas didn't leave the warehouse behind. He didn't take credit in press releases. He just rotated locations one by one, unsigned, unnoticed. Not to catch people slipping, but to stay grounded in what the company was doing right and what it couldn't afford to ignore ever again. He'd learned something out there on Route 8, with sweat dripping into his eyes and a stranger's name on his badge. It wasn't enough to build a company. You had to carry it too, and sometimes you carried it from the back of a delivery van.